Forget the dusty cowboy boots and the lonely tumbleweed. Hollywood's most legendary westerns owe a debt to a world of top-knots, katana, and quiet vengeance. That's right, some of the wildest, grittiest shootouts in American cinema were born in the shadow of the samurai. Ever wonder why your favorite gunslinger acts more like a wandering ronin than a ranch hand? Tonight, we're unsheathing the real swords behind the six-shooters. Ready for a culture clash no one saw coming? Let's ride. Seven Samurai 1954. Let's get one thing straight. If there's a Mount Olympus of samurai films, Seven Samurai is Zeus, Thor, and the whole thundercloud combined. Akira Kurosawa's 1954 epic didn't just shake up Japanese cinema, it kicked open the saloon doors and changed westerns forever. Picture a poverty-stricken village, bandits on the horizon, and seven warriors with more baggage than a doomed wagon train. This isn't just a good guys save the town setup. It's the granddaddy blueprint of every band of misfits you've seen since. Kurosawa's genius was taking classic samurai lore and flipping it on its head. These aren't noblemen riding out of some feudal fairy tale. His samurai are battered, broke, and just as lost as the villagers they're hired to protect. There's Kambei, the battle-worn leader who's already seen enough blood for a dozen lifetimes. Kikuchio, played by Toshiro Mifune, is the wild card, half warrior, half comic relief, all raw nerve. The team isn't some hand-picked elite squad. They're loners and outcasts, united by necessity, not honor. Sound familiar? That's because the Magnificent Seven, arguably the most iconic American Western ensemble, lifted its entire playbook from here. When Hollywood producers saw Seven Samurai, they didn't just take notes. They took the whole script, dusted it with gunpowder, and set it in the Mexican frontier. But this film's influence goes deeper than simple plot theft. Kurosawa introduced the assemble the team trope, the slow burn training montage, the morally gray hero, and the idea that courage isn't just about skill with a blade or a gun, but about risking everything for people who can't fight for themselves. Even the pacing, with its rising tension, quiet interludes, and explosive showdowns, set the tone for a generation of Western directors who suddenly realized that you could actually care about the people dodging bullets. In the end, Seven Samurai isn't just a film. It's the genetic code spliced into every great Western you've ever loved. And let's be honest, without it, the American West would look a lot less legendary and a lot more lost. So next time you see a ragtag posse saddle up for a final stand, tip your hat to the samurai who started it all. Yojimbo, 1961. Before Clint Eastwood ever squinted down the dusty main street of a spaghetti western, there was Sanjuro Kuwabatake, strolling into a windswept town where death was a business and loyalty was for sale. Yojimbo, literally the bodyguard, is the swaggering, sly godfather of the wandering anti-hero, and every gunslinger with a mysterious past owes him a stiff drink. Akira Kurosawa once again rewrites the rules, dropping his samurai protagonist into a town split by two ruthless gangs. With a head full of wild hair and an attitude that screams, "Don't mess with me," Toshiro Mifune's Sanjuro isn't interested in anyone's code but his own. He plays both sides, stoking chaos and confusion, pitting warlords against each other for his own amusement, and, just maybe, a pinch of justice. Sound familiar? That's because Sergio Leone saw Yojimbo, heard the silent invitation, and ran with it. He remade the story as A Fistful of Dollars, swapping the katana for a Colt .45, and Mifune's half-smirk for Eastwood's stone-cold silence. Leone didn't even bother getting the rights, and Toho Studios sued him for it. The influence was that blatant. But Yojimbo's legacy is more than just a blueprint for Western copycats. Kurosawa's sharp eye for staging, bodies strewn like chess pieces, dust swirling in the afternoon light, the long, pregnant pauses before violence erupts, redefined tension. He turned the duel into a dance, the stare-down into a psychological chess match. The film's dark humor, grim cynicism, and playfully subversive tone all found new homes in the West, birthing the cynical gunslinger trope that would soon dominate Hollywood's frontier. When you see a lone stranger arrive in a lawless town, play villains against each other, and then walk away before the dust settles. You're watching Yojimbo, even if you're a million miles from Japan. The idea that a hero could be selfish, sly, and still walk away with your grudging respect, that's pure Kurosawa. And the Western genre never looked back. Sanjuro, 1962. If Yojimbo introduced the world to the samurai as a trickster anti-hero, then Sanjuro kicked the door wide open and tossed a few cherry bombs in for good measure. The not quite a sequel, not quite a spin-off, follows Toshiro Mifune's sharp-tongued Ronin as he stumbles into yet another hornet's nest of corruption, this time helping a gaggle of hopelessly naive young samurai who are in way over their heads. From the first scene, Sanjuro makes it clear, honor is messy, and doing the right thing is a whole lot trickier than the textbooks would have you believe. The film's tone is lighter, almost satirical, poking fun at the very idea of the noble warrior. Mifune Sanjuro is jaded, blunt, and barely able to conceal his eye rolls at his bumbling protégés. He doesn't just solve problems with his sword, he solves them with wit, sarcasm, and sheer nerve. This blend of action and irreverence is exactly what gave birth to the wisecracking anti-heroes in westerns of the late 60s and 70s. From Lee Van Cleef's wry bounty hunters to Paul Newman's sardonic gunslingers. But don't let the humor fool you. Sanjuro still delivers sharp-edged drama and some of the most stylish swordplay Kurosawa ever filmed. The climactic final duel is a masterclass in tension and subversion, delivering a shocking burst of violence after a film full of restraint and teasing. Western filmmakers borrowed not just the plot mechanics, but the rhythm of Kurosawa's storytelling, quiet build-ups, sudden twists, and moments of levity that only heighten the stakes. In a landscape of tired tropes, Sanjuro showed Hollywood how to refresh the formula. A world-weary hero, a band of fools, and a corrupt system begging for disruption. If that doesn't scream Western, nothing does. And that final splattering cut, let's just say, Sergio Leone and Sam Peckinpah took notes. Rashomon, 1950. Let's be honest, if you've ever watched a Western where no one can agree on what really went down, where every character's version of the truth is more twisted than a rattlesnake in a pretzel factory, you're watching the ghost of Rashomon ride through town. Akira Kurosawa's 1950 masterpiece didn't just shake up Japanese cinema. It detonated a cultural bomb that sent shockwaves from Tokyo to Tinseltown and back again. The plot sounds deceptively simple. A murder in a forest, a bandit, a samurai, a woman, and a woodcutter, each spinning their own version of the same tragic event. But Kurosawa isn't playing by the usual rules. Instead of delivering a neat, buttoned-up narrative, Rashomon serves up a feast of contradictions. Who's lying? Who's telling the truth? Does it even matter? Suddenly, the idea of a reliable narrator is out the window, and moral certainty gets left behind in the mud. Western filmmakers were watching, and they were floored. Here was a new way to tell a story, fractured, ambiguous, laced with doubt and suspicion. It didn't take long for Hollywood to snap up the rights and rework Rashomon as the outrage 1964, with Paul Newman donning a sombrero and every cowboy in sight, squabbling over what really happened in the desert heat. But the influence spread much further than that single remake. Westerns and film noir and courtroom dramas suddenly embraced moral ambiguity, unreliable perspectives, and stories where the truth was as elusive as water in a cactus. The real trick? Rashomon made it clear that heroes could be unreliable, villains could have tragic motives, and even the camera itself could lie. Suddenly, the black and white morality of early westerns started to look naive, even childish. As the genre matured, filmmakers like Sam Peckinpah, Robert Altman, and Clint Eastwood borrowed this ambiguity wholesale, giving us grittier, more human stories. So the next time you watch a Western where everyone's story keeps changing and trust is in short supply, tip your hat to Kurosawa and Rashomon. He didn't just muddy the water, he made it art, and Westerns have been drinking from that well ever since. Harakiri, 1962. Brace yourself. Harakiri is not here to make you feel good about samurai, or cowboys, or any tradition that claims to stand for honor while hiding rot underneath. Directed by Masaki Kobayashi, this 1962 gut punch of a film is part revenge drama, part social critique, and 100% a middle finger to empty ritual. And Western filmmakers, they lapped it up. The story kicks off when a broken, unemployed samurai named Hanshiro Tsugumo arrives at a lord's mansion, asking to perform ritual suicide, Harakiri, in their courtyard. The clan tries to scare him off by recounting the tragic fate of another desperate ronin, but Tsugumo isn't here to be bullied. As his tale unfolds, the true hypocrisy and cruelty of the clan are revealed, and Hanshiro's act of supposed surrender transforms into a slow, righteous reckoning. Forget the clean duels and noble last stands. Harakiri is all about moral corrosion beneath the armor. Kobayashi strips away the myth of the honorable death, showing ritual as theater, compassion as weakness, and authority as a rigged game. Sound familiar? That's because spaghetti westerns, especially the bleak, cynical kind that took over Italy in the late 60s, borrowed the entire vibe. Films like Requiem for a Gringo, 1968 echo Harakiri's atmosphere of cruelty and doomed heroes, swapping swords for six-shooters but keeping the soul intact. But Harakiri's real legacy is its willingness to say, traditions can kill, and sometimes a true hero is the one who stands alone, calling out the lie. This attitude, this simmering defiance is all over the westerns of the late 20th century, from Peckinpah's blood-drenched epics to Eastwood's lonely, vengeful outcasts. The world isn't fair, says Harakiri, but the fight against it, that's where you find real honor. If you're tired of fairy tales and want your heroes complicated, wounded, and just a little bit dangerous, Harakiri is your dark, bracing shot of cinematic whiskey. And Hollywood drank deep. The Hidden Fortress, 1958. Think hidden treasure, and maybe you picture a map, a cryptic clue, and a grizzled outlaw with a twinkle in his eye. But The Hidden Fortress didn't just inspire treasure hunt tropes. It quietly rewired the Western, and, as a bonus, gave George Lucas the DNA for Star Wars, which, let's be real, is just a Western with lightsabers and droids. Directed by Akira Kurosawa, yep, again, get used to his name. The Hidden Fortress flips the samurai genre inside out by making its story about two bumbling peasants who get tangled up in a dangerous quest. They stumble upon a tough-as-nails general, played, of course, by Toshiro Mifune, and a disguised princess. Together, they try to smuggle gold through enemy territory, dodging warlords, bandits, and naturally, their own cowardice. What made this film so influential in the West wasn't just its action or humor. Kurosawa's radical choice to tell the epic story from the perspective of the lowest characters in society, the peasants, not the warriors, was a lightning bolt to the Western genre. Suddenly, the hero's journey didn't have to be about the toughest guy in the room. Sometimes it was about the ordinary folks swept up in history, the ones who never make the headlines. This shift made its way into revisionist westerns, where the camera lingered on the drifters, the outcasts, the people in the margins. But it doesn't end there. The Hidden Fortress is a masterclass in pacing and suspense, with dynamic set pieces, comic relief, and, let's be honest, a plot that feels like a dry run for every ragtag group on the run adventure you've seen since. Think The Magnificent Seven, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Even the good, the bad, and the ugly all owe a debt to this template. And if you ever doubted the link between The Hidden Fortress and the West, just ask George Lucas. He's admitted again and again that his space opera's structure, from the opening bickering of C-3PO and R2-D2, stand-ins for the film's peasants to the heroic rescues, was straight from Kurosawa's playbook. So, next time a Western pivots to show you the world from the bottom up, or a pair of comic relief nobodies stumbles into the spotlight, know you're in the shadow of The Hidden Fortress, a film that snuck in, stole the gold, and changed the genre forever. Samurai Assassin, 1965. Samurai Assassin doesn't wait for you to get comfortable. It grabs you by the collar and hurls you headfirst into a snow-swept, paranoid world where trust is currency and everyone's pockets are empty. Directed by Kaihachi Okamoto, this thriller isn't just another sword-swinging spectacle. It's a masterclass in political tension and existential dread, and it left a cold, unmistakable mark on the Western's evolution. The film is set in 1860, a powder keg moment in Japanese history, as reformist samurai plot to assassinate a powerful official. In the middle of the intrigue stands Nero Tsuruchio, a brooding, desperate ronin played with haunted ferocity by Toshiro Mifune. Nero's a man searching for meaning, status, and, above all, a name for himself, surrounded by secret plots, shifting allegiances, and the constant threat of betrayal. The snow falls, the stakes rise, and the viewer is sucked into a vortex where every handshake could be fatal. So, how does this translate to the American West? Simple. Samurai Assassin redefined what it meant to be an outsider in a genre full of loners. Its focus on doomed quests, personal vendettas, and the emotional cost of violence injected new blood into Western storytelling, especially as the classic white hat, black hat morality gave way to complex, wounded anti-heroes. Think of the haunted protagonists in films like The Wild Bunch or the driven loners of High Plains Drifter, men pushed to violence not for glory, but because the world offers them no better options. And let's not ignore Okamoto's technical wizardry. His use of weather, snow swirling as a metaphor for confusion and fate, became a visual cue for later Western directors who used the elements to deepen atmosphere. The film's climactic showdown, as the snow turns red, is a grim ballet that Peckinpah and others would echo with bullets and blood. Samurai Assassin proved that a hero's journey could be tragic, that victory could feel hollow, and that no one rides into the sunset untouched by the cost of violence. If you ever wondered when Westerns traded in their shiny badges for battered souls, this is where the deal went down. The Sword of Doom, 1966. If you think Westerns invented the haunted anti-hero, meet Ryunosuke Tsukue, the original soul-sick wanderer with a stare that could curdle milk. The Sword of Doom, directed by Kihachi Okamoto, isn't just a samurai movie. It's a deep dive into pure, uncut nihilism. This is a story where morality gets its throat cut in the first act and spends the rest of the runtime bleeding out in the snow. Ryunosuke, played with icy detachment by Tatsuya Nakadai, is a samurai so ruthless, so devoid of conscience, he practically glides through the world, leaving disaster in his wake. There's no quest for honor, no redemptive arc, just an avalanche of violence, madness, and spiritual decay. If he's not slaughtering rivals, he's running from his own demons, and every sword fight is less about skill and more about Ryunosuke's unraveling sanity. So, how did this brutal meditation on evil influence Westerns? Easy. The Sword of Doom arrived just as the Western genre was ditching its white hat heroes for something darker. Directors like Sam Peckinpah, Don Siegel, and even Clint Eastwood himself took notes. Suddenly it was okay, expected even, for your protagonist to be a little unhinged, to kill not out of necessity, but because the world just pushed them too far. The film's relentless pace and eerie atmosphere, fog-shrouded duels, silent standoffs, violence that erupts out of nowhere became the stylistic backbone for revisionist westerns in the late 60s and 70s. The traditional showdown was now a psychological crucible, a test not of skill, but of the soul's breaking point. The spaghetti westerns, in particular, borrowed this intensity wholesale. The man with no name might as well be Ryunosuke's gun-toting cousin. In the end, the Sword of Doom showed both samurai and Western filmmakers that true danger doesn't always come from the villain with the black hat, but from the darkness inside the hero. It's a bleak, breathtaking ride, and Westerns never look the same after meeting Ryunosuke's thousand-yard stare. Zatoichi, The Blind Swordsman, 1962, and series. If there's a single character who proves you don't need eyes to see the truth, or cut down a room full of thugs, it's Zatoichi, the wandering blind masseur with a hidden sword and a sharper wit. Launched in 1962, the Zatoichi series exploded into Japanese pop culture, spawning over 24 films and a TV run that lasted for years. But the real twist? This cane-wielding swordsman changed the very fabric of Western heroism. Zatoichi, played with sly charm by Shintaro Katsu, is the ultimate underdog. Villains underestimate him every time. He shuffles into a new town, gets mocked, bullied, even pitied. But the second blades are drawn, he transforms into a human tornado, dispatching foes with uncanny speed. Beneath the action is a sly commentary on the value of humility, the blindness of prejudice, and the universal longing for justice. Western filmmakers couldn't resist. The concept of the unlikely hero, a blind man, a drifter, a nobody, showed up in Western after Western. Take Blindman 1971, a spaghetti Western about a blind gunfighter protecting women in the Wild West. It's Zatoichi with a cowboy hat and a six-shooter, right down to the sudden, explosive violence and the moral lesson that nobody's as helpless as they seem. But the influence runs deeper. Zatoichi's rootless wanderer, championing the oppressed while haunted by his own outsider status, became a stock figure in countless American westerns, from TV's Kung Fu to Eastwood's Pale Rider. The blend of humor, pathos, and razor-sharp action made it okay for westerns to have heroes who didn't look or act like John Wayne. The myth of the lone avenger suddenly had room for underdogs, outcasts, and, yes, blind swordsmen with a sense of irony. If you love a hero who beats the odds and turns every insult into an invitation for justice, tip your hat to Zatoichi, the man who saw the soul of the West, even if he couldn't see the sunset. Lone Wolf and Cub, Sword of Vengeance, 1972, and series. There's a reason Lone Wolf and Cub has achieved almost mythic status among cinephiles and filmmakers. It's the blueprint for every reluctant dad and deadly kid, pairing that's come since. Released in 1972 and followed by 5 more films, this series didn't just up the ante on samurai action. It injected new blood into the Western by making fatherhood as dangerous as any duel at high noon. Ogami Ito, played by Tomisaburo Wakayama, is a disgraced shogunate executioner framed for treason. With his toddler son Daigoro in tow, riding in a wooden baby cart that's tricked out with more weapons than a gunslinger's saddlebag, he roams Japan as a hired sword, righting wrongs and cutting down his enemies with merciless efficiency. The twist: every battle is fought with Daigoro watching, learning, surviving. The emotional weight is staggering. Ogami is both protector and destroyer, his child, his last tether to humanity. The West was quick to catch on. The lone guardian and child motif exploded in everything from Road to Perdition to Logan. And yes, even The Mandalorian, which is basically Lone Wolf and Cub with blasters and Baby Yoda. The template is all there. The relentless pursuit, the mix of violence and tenderness, the blurred line between father and weapon. But Lone Wolf and Cub didn't just give us great action and emotional stakes. It forced the Western to confront the cost of violence on family, innocence, and legacy. No more clean-cut cowboys. Now we had broken men wrestling with love, vengeance, and the impossible hope of redemption. The blood-splattered standoffs, the sense of an endless journey, the fight to keep a child safe in a brutal world. These are now core elements of the modern Western, and it's all thanks to a Ronin and his son on the road to nowhere. So, if you're drawn to stories where every bullet or blade has a price, and every child's laugh echoes over the carnage, thank Lone Wolf and Cub for rewriting the rules. The West never saw it coming. Lady Snowblood, 1973. Before Tarantino ever dreamed of Kill Bill or Uma Thurman donned her yellow jumpsuit, Japan gave the world Lady Snowblood, a film that sliced a bloody path straight through samurai cinema and into the beating heart of Western storytelling. Directed by Toshiya Fujita, this 1973 cult classic tells the story of Yuki Kashima, a woman born in prison and raised for one purpose only: vengeance. Armed with a parasol-housed blade and a gaze colder than a Dakota winter, Yuki is an avenging angel who turns violence into poetry and suffering into spectacle. What makes Lady Snowblood such a landmark isn't just its feverish violence or its unforgettable set pieces, though those are legendary. It's the way the film reframes the revenge story, giving us a heroine forged by generational trauma, unstoppable and utterly alone. The violence is operatic, stylized, each kill painted like a tragic mural. There's a sense of fatalism and destiny, the kind of mythic inevitability that Westerns would soon borrow for their own stories of blood and retribution. And borrow they did. Quentin Tarantino has called Lady Snowblood a direct influence on Kill Bill, from its chapter-driven structure to its vengeful female lead and eye-popping visual style. But the ripple effect goes beyond Tarantino. Westerns began embracing non-linear narratives, bold color palettes, and morally complex female protagonists, elements rare before Lady Snowblood's icy, calculated arrival. The blending of genre tropes, martial arts, melodrama, revenge, and stark social critique proved you could take the bones of a samurai story and dress them in Western dust, or vice versa. Even the film's music, a haunting mix of melancholy ballads and tension-building strings, feels like it's daring the Western to up its game. Lady Snowblood carved out space for revenge tales where justice is personal, messy, and often left unfinished, a lesson Westerns have learned all too well in the years since. So, the next time you see a lone figure out for vengeance, painting the town red sometimes literally, remember? Yuki walked that snowy path first, and Hollywood's still following her footsteps. Samurai Rebellion, 1967. When it comes to the West's obsession with defiance, doomed rebellion, and the tragic dignity of standing alone against power, Samurai Rebellion might be the most overlooked torchbearer in the samurai canon. Directed by Masaki Kobayashi, no stranger to stories about men getting crushed by systems, this 1967 classic turns the quiet family drama into an explosive act of resistance. At the center is Isaburo Sasahara, played with volcanic restraint by Toshiro Mifune. Isaburo isn't some glory-hunting ronin. He's a loyal vassal who's spent a lifetime towing the line, keeping his family safe under a capricious petty lord. But when that lord tries to rip Isaburo's beloved daughter-in-law from his home, after she's given the lord a son, no less, Isaburo's patience cracks. What starts as a family dispute escalates into a showdown with an entire feudal order. The stakes? Everything. Family, honor, life itself. Kobayashi's direction is patient and precise, building unbearable tension in quiet rooms and tight corridors. When the violence comes, it's brutal and personal. None of that stylized pageantry here. It's the kind of last stand narrative Westerns have built entire subgenres around. Think of High Noon, the Oxbow Incident, or Unforgiven, all stories where men must choose between peace and the impossible price of doing what's right. But what Samurai Rebellion really gave Westerns was a new emotional core. Here, the rebel isn't driven by pride or ambition, but by a deep, almost desperate love for his family. Isaburo's fight isn't just for his own name, it's for his son, his daughter-in-law, and the entire idea of decency in a crooked world. The final desperate duel isn't a victory march. It's a lament for all the small people crushed by history. So, next time you see a Western hero refuse to back down, even when the odds are impossible and the cost is everything, remember, Isaburo stood tall in the face of tyranny long before the West caught on. Sometimes, the biggest rebellions start in the smallest rooms, and Kobayashi's masterpiece makes that heartbreak legendary. So there you have it, 12 slices of steel-sharp storytelling that crossed oceans and rewrote the Western playbook forever. From haunted ronin to avenging angels, from blind swordsmen to broken fathers. These samurai tales are the secret spirit guides of every gunslinger, outlaw, and anti-hero to ever gallop across the silver screen. Which samurai story surprised you most? Got a favorite crossover, or one you wish Hollywood would try? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget, legends never stay in one country for long.